Alright you guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So this video is kind of a little bit overdue. I was trying to make a 1-year video, but that 1 year was actually back in July, so we're about a month late, but that's okay because I was actually waiting on some few mods that you might be able to see back there, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So essentially what I want to make this video, how I want to make it is basically the video version of my gear project link. So I'll put my gear project link in the bio, link in the description rather, of everything that's on this truck, right? So from suspension, wheels, and tires. If you don't want to watch this video, feel free to head over there and then check that out. So basically, yeah, this video will be a video version of that. So I'll basically go over everything and a little bit more nuance, right? So that gear project link was basically just all the parts listed and with the links of where you can get them and all that. But you know, making everything work together is a little bit more nuanced than that. Not a lot of detail that I can really put through text. And this is all details that I would tell anybody if I would meet them, like at a meet, or if they had asked questions, if they see me out in public or in the parking lot. So yeah, so I hope you guys get a little bit more detail out of this video compared to the gear project link. Is always being continually updated. So yeah, before we get started, I'd like to say thank you to all the build sponsors that have been part of this build. And I couldn't build the truck out this quickly without them, right? So shout out to those guys for helping out with the build and getting it to where it is today. So that being said, let's get to it. So I figured let's just start with what this truck is, right? So this is a 2022 Toyota Tundra SR5 Premium. It's a TRD Sport package and it's 4-wheel drive. So a lot of people were asking me, why didn't I just get a TRD off-road? Why did I go with an SR5? Why didn't I go limited? Mainly because I knew that I was gonna upgrade this thing, right? So I didn't really consider getting the TRD off-road or the limited or like the TRD Pro because I knew that I was gonna upgrade it with aftermarket parts. So that's the main reason why I went with an SR5, because I wanted the least amount of stuff that I would have to replace anyway, right? So if you're gonna get a TRD Pro, but then swap out the suspension, it's like, well, why are you paying all this money for, might as well just get a limited at that point, hybrid, right? And I didn't get the TRD off-road package because I didn't really need the rear locker or the MTS or the crawl control, because I knew that I was gonna turn this into more of a pre-runner build, right? So when we're out in the desert, we're going like 60, 70, 80 miles an hour in 2-wheel drive most of the time. And I only really needed 4-wheel drive just to get unstuck from the sand, right? So every time we stop and you gotta get going, you don't wanna just smash the throttle because then you're just gonna dig yourself a hole. You wanna ease out slowly, and sometimes the sand is a little bit too loose. So you want to basically, I'll just put it in 4-high real quick, get out, and then put it back in 2-wheel drive and then get going. So that's the extent of 4-wheel drive that I use. And the occasional hill, or if any of my friends want to go out wheeling out in the mountains, we'll do that. And most of the time, 4-wheel drive works fine. Most of the Gen 2 guys have been in 4-wheel drive no locker for years and have had little issues. So what you get from the premium package is, I went over this in my other video, is essentially just the Softex leather, which is right here, which is super nice. I really like the Softex compared to the cloth. And you also get the leather steering wheel. It's pretty cool. It's all right. That's mainly what I wanted to get, was just the leather seats, and everything else was kind of extra. So I have the smaller screen there, that's an 8-inch. The 16 or the 14-inch, I think it's 14, would have been cool, but that was more of a nice to have, not really a must for me. And it's a non-hybrid, which means that I don't have the battery. But what I do have instead is underseat storage. So this is one of the main selling points for getting a non-hybrid, is because you get a lot more storage. If you didn't know, Non-hybrids get that under seat storage. The hybrids have the battery under the seat. So that's that. And yeah, we'll start getting into all the juicy stuff that I know you guys want to talk about. All right, so first on the list is going to be suspension. So my fabricator guy, Primo, or at Prosworks on Instagram, we did a lot of work to really dial in this front suspension. So what we have here is a King Shocks 2.5 Tundra kit. And I believe this was one of the first ones. I think I was like the second or third guy to really get these installed on you know, the new gen Tundra. And so far it's been awesome. I installed it at around 5,000 miles, and right now I'm at 24. So that's like, you know, almost 20,000 miles of abuse that I really put this thing through, and it's been solid so far, no issues. And if you guys are kind of keen, you'll know that this is not a stock King setup I have right now. So the stock King coilovers come with a 16-inch spring, and this is an 18-inch spring now from Eibach. So Eibach right there. So what that allows us to do is, because of the weight of my truck in the front, with the front bumper and all the lights and all that, it sagged it a little bit. So all I had to do was raise up the preload, right? So preload was basically this collar. You preload it so that the spring gets compressed and wants to extend out and lift your truck higher. What was happening was I was getting a lot of coil bind. So what coil bind is when your spring basically, you know, compresses as much as it can until it reaches its block height, which means the individual coils are touching each other. And when it reaches its block height, that's basically as short as it can compress. And if you still have travel left, you know, and you're not hitting your bump stops, then you're going to be in big trouble, because all that energy is going to transfer to your lower rod end, and then you'll end up snapping your lower rod end. So that's definitely not ideal, right? So what we did was we swapped it out with an 18-inch. Now I have tons more room in between the coils, and I've jumped this truck a few times, and no coil bind, which is evident of, if you see in between the coil springs, there's no evidence of touching. And I've pushed the setup pretty hard. So I'm confident that this setup will last and it won't give me any issues. So this is the King 2.5s with the adjusters. So what's cool about the adjusters is you can basically use this knob and you can adjust compression. Adjust that compression valve. It either opens or restricts the flow of oil that gets pushed by the rod piston into the shock body, displaces the oil, and compresses the gases inside the reservoir. So a lot of people don't realize that the reservoir actually isn't fluid. It's actually more gas. I'm not sure the exact gas. That's that. Solid so far. Loved it. So let's talk about the upper control arm. This is an upper control arm. This is from Total Chaos Fabrication. They have their 1-inch uniball with the polyurethane pivots. So I absolutely love this setup. So I know I've mentioned it in my previous video before, but Total Chaos Fabrication, they do R&D with King. So you can imagine that if these two companies were doing R&D together, they, you know, developed the best kit, and they were meant to be together. So that's ultimately what I believe, and that's what a lot of other people believe. Total Chaos is an established brand. They've been around for such a long time, especially in Toyotas and off-road, and this thing really takes a beating. You'll see on my passenger side that, you know, it's taken a lot of abuse. It has some marks and some Mars, and you know, got some scuffs, but so far it's been awesome. And you know, I always recommend Total Chaos over all the other brands, and I will continue to probably use Total Chaos for all of my setups moving forward, if I ever get rid of this truck or I upgrade it. So yeah, in the back here, let's talk about the King shocks for the rear. So this is also King's 2.5 shock with the remote resi, and this rear has also been super cool. It also has the adjuster back here, and I also forgot to mention it's actually finned. So what the fin reservoir does is just increase surface area so that, you know, it improves a lot of the cooling of the oil and the gases inside, so it runs cooler and it cycles better and it lasts longer. So King 2.5 with the shock guard there. I don't know if you can see, my shock guard is kind of beat up, and you know, especially this lower rod in here, it's seen better days, but that's why we use it, right? That's why we get all the suspension, so that we can use it to their abilities, their best performance, right? So I definitely do not baby my truck. That's the shock there. What's actually holding the truck up is, if you didn't know, the shocks themselves only help with the oscillation, the body. They don't actually lift the truck. So what actually lifts the truck is the rear spring. So look back there. This is my rear spring. It's not factory spring, and I'm not running a spacer. It's actually an Old Man Emu 2865, I believe. And it's about, I want to say it's like 2 inches taller than the stock spring, but it has a little bit more poundage in terms of the spring rate, which lifts the truck up to be able to stuff these big tires here. So that's the spring I went with. It's a single rate spring, meaning it's the same pounds per inch no matter how compressed it is. Ideally you would want a variable rate, but a lot of the aftermarket spring manufacturers aren't really doing a lot of R&D specifically for the Tundra yet. I do know that Dobinson's has a rear spring, as well as Icon, but those seem to be more out of stock than they are in stock. So so far these have been fine for me, and I'll probably keep using them until a more dedicated spring comes out. So one thing that's really important with lifting your truck with more suspension travel is you have to be wary about the brake lines. So I got these brake lines early on. These are from Yoda Mafia. These are the stainless steel brake lines, and what these will do is essentially extend your brake line so that you don't have a chance of snapping them off if you ever get into a situation where you're overextending your brake lines and they snap off, and then all of a sudden you don't have any brakes. So I do know on the Tundra, the new gen 2022 up, Gen 3, the front, you can kind of get away with that, but with the rear, you absolutely cannot. So let's take a look at the rear here. So my rear brake lines, you might be able to see them right there. So those rear brake lines are super important, because what's going to happen is when your axle travels and it droops down, you're going to get a lot more travel out of these extended shocks, and you're going to snap your rear brake lines. And most of the time, your rear brakes are going to be the ones that are going to be doing a lot of the general stopping for you. So super important that you get rear brake lines. I got mine from Yoda Mafia. I do know that other vendors are looking at developing some for our truck. So depending on when this video comes out, rear brake lines, super important for your truck. Another thing that's important is your bump stops. So I have the extended bump stops from DURO bumps, and these ones are going to be like almost double as thick as the stock bump stop. So if you ever look under your truck, look over here, this bump stop, this thing is freaking fat. All right, this thing, I've hit this bump stop multiple times, and it literally just feels like you're hitting, well, not clouds. I mean, obviously it's a little bit, but it's less jarring than if you were to hit the stock bump stop. So what's cool about the front is you can get these fronts right now at durobumps.com, and these fronts are super cool because it also helps limit that up travel. So when you hit like some really hard dips or some whoops, you kind of want to make sure that you're getting a lot of up travel, you want the bump stop to soak up a lot of the up travel, and when you hit your bump stop, you're not gonna ruin, your suspension. So the bump stops are gonna be that last bottom out protection. And so that's the front. And in the rear, we have a current prototype set of the rear bump stops, also from DURO bumps. So these are gonna be these guys right here. So what's cool about these is these function the same, but I think that the rears are a lot more beefier than the stock rears. Like the front is beefier than the stock front by like, let's just arbitrary number, like 2 times, right? These are like gonna be like 3 times beefier than the stock ones. And these things have been awesome. They've also helped, they basically do the same thing as the front. They help kind of cushion that up travel when you know, either go for a big bump or you're in the air and you land. So that's gonna be another big thing, part of the suspension. So what also happens when you lift these new Tundras is, because it's a 5-link rear now, similar to the Toyota Land Cruiser, what happens is your panhard bar becomes angled and your axle is actually going to be shifted to the driver's side more. So what ends up happening is your wheel on this side will be poked out more on the driver's side than they are on the passenger side. So what that happens is, if you can imagine, if the axle is right here and you lift it, it's going to want to lift up and towards the driver's side. So what ends up happening is when you hit a bump, the arc of the suspension cycle, actually what you want is to look like this, up and down, but what actually happens is it starts looking like this. It starts shifting side to side, right? So to fix that, we installed this. If you're familiar with that, you'll know who this is. If in the Toyota 150 Prado, 4Runner GX, FJ Cruiser, you'll know exactly what this is. This is the bolt-on track bar correction kit from Dr. KDSS. So Dr. KDSS, if you don't know who that is, they do a lot of testing and abuse on the 4Runner platform. So Dom over with Dr. KDSS, he has a white 4Runner, long travel, and that thing is a beast. That thing boogies hard. And this is his product, you know? So what this does is, if you look, if I can zoom, that bolt on the bottom, right there, this bolt on the bottom, that's where the original factory panhard axle location is. So what he does is he raises it depending on your lift. You can either use the bottom hole that's currently not being used, or you can use the top one, so that you can raise your panhard bar, which is this thing, is straighten out that panhard bar back to relatively flat, so that your suspension cycle will be more linear once again. So that only happens when you're higher than 1-inch lift, but even still, a 1-inch lift from the factory, or a 1-inch lift from like a Westcott kit, or like a spacer or whatever, you'll immediately notice the improved handling and better driving stability. So yeah, that's basically the front and rear suspension in a nutshell. And I'm super happy with how it's set up right now. This thing actually absolutely boogies out in the desert. I think my front wheel travel is maybe 12 inches, because my rep at King told me that the stroke length on this shock is 6 inches. So with Toyota's 1:2 motion ratio, which means however many inches the suspension travels is double what's experienced at the wheel. So if the suspension droops 1 inch, the wheel will droop 2 inches. So with that being said, 6-inch stroke should equate to about 12 inches of travel. Oh, and I also do not have my front sway bar. So I removed my front sway bar. I'd advise, you know, like, it's pretty easy to remove. It only takes like 8 bolts, and it greatly improves your off-road ability. Without the front sway bar connecting the 2 wheels, you get way more independent wheel travel, and it just feels nicer off-road. And you know, and albeit too, like on the freeway, it really depends on, you know, your driving habits. If you're like trying to race this thing and like you're like ripping around corners, you're probably not gonna have a good time. But for me, if you just take it slow, if you drive it with an understanding that you're gonna get a lot more sway, it's not terrible. So the front is off, the rear is still on. The rear is probably more important than the front. So you definitely want to keep the back. You want to keep the rear sway bar. I don't even know where it is, but I mean, it's still there. You know, trust me, bro, right? But anyways, yeah. So the front sway bar is still on. The rear, no, front sway bar is off. The rear is on. So for wheels and tires, let's talk about it. These are 37s, 37, 12.5, R17 Toyo tires, open country mud trains, or I just call it Toyo MTs. So these girls are absolutely beefy. So what's cool about them is they're just, you know, they're just the quintessential off-road tire. Like, you think about off-road tires, you know, you think about Toyo, BF Goodrich. And I've mentioned in my previous videos before why I went with Toyos instead of BFGs. If you'd like to go check that out, my reasoning, you can check that video out. I might link it in the description or put it in, you know, a pinned. But essentially, I really like these Toyos because they're gonna be the truest to their size, right? So when I wanna pay for a 37, I wanna get closest to a 37. And Toyo and Nitto are the most true to size and the most true to actually like what they are. And that's pretty apparent if you put a BFG KO2 or a KM3 even next to this one. It's gonna look a lot smaller. So 37s, how are you gonna make them fit, right? So we did a lot of trimming in the front. There's no way to go around. You know, there's no way to not trim if you want to fit 37s, especially at full tuck too. So I might put some B-roll of us cutting this fender up, but happy to report that I do not rub in the front one bit. All right, you guys, so this is after the cut, and look how much more clearance we have here. We have a full, what is that? You say like a half inch?
Half inch.
Yeah, full clearance. Can you turn it? Like turn it passenger? Yeah, look at that. Clears, all right, turn driver. Yeah, perfect. Perfect clearance. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some kind of like plastic trim liner on this, just so that if for whatever reason, you know, like I hit it at a weird angle or something, it won't cut up the tires too much, or my future set of tires, because these ones are kind of already messed up. But nah, this looks really good. So we're gonna try it with the fender flare back on, and then we'll see from there. And you might be like, damn, like this dude's lying. No, like I'll put a video slow motion. Like the tires touch a little bit up here, but they're clearanced in a way to where they're not gonna damage the tires, right? So what's gonna happen is when the suspension cycles up, it's going to just hit this lip, and we've cut enough on the fender flare so that the tires just basically bypass and hit under this lip without any problems. And what was happening was, before I had that, it would be hitting this, and then it would start bending the fender flare, and then it would start bending the panel. My whole panel was all messed up before, and it was just no good. You can kind of see the remnants of the panel gap. It was pretty bad, but so far, yeah, we fixed that, and I'm happy to show that, you know, the front, I can get full tuck, full suspension. I've jumped this multiple times. I've hit the bump stop multiple times. All right, guys, so we have the tire back on, mounted temporarily. We have all the suspension components mounted temporarily. We took the springs out because what we're gonna do is we're going to cycle the suspension. So what that means is we're gonna put a jack under the lower control arm so that we can lift up the truck and simulate, you know, bump to bump or a hard bottom out. If you were to go on a jump or you were to hit a dip, to see, you know, the clearance of our tire. So what we're looking for is the clearance between the tire and the fender panel here. So he's gonna try to go all the way to hit the bump stop, and we'll see if we need to cut anything, which we probably will. So, how close is he to the bump?
We're maxed out on the bump stop. Yeah.
Okay.
We're like on.
So, looks like we have a lot of what? Oh, ow. So, is that max?
Yeah.
No way, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's with the tire straight. You think you move it? You can like turn it?
Turn the tire?
Yeah. My front fenders don't rip out anymore. And that's ultimately what you want to be conscious about, right? Because you don't want to keep ripping off your fenders. Carbon fiber fenders are pretty expensive. And if you can wait to get those installed, then I'd say go for it, because it's not just carbon fiber, you got to paint it. And sometimes painting is a little bit more expensive than the fenders themselves. So that's the tires. And they're wrapped around a wheel, obviously. So these are gonna be the Method race wheels, MRW 315s, or I call them 315s. 17 by 8.5, 0 offset. And the offset is important, because offset, what that's gonna be doing is your wheel offset, the more negative wheel offset you have, the more the tire is gonna wanna push outwards, right? So you see those guys with like really big poke, they have either wheel spacers or they have really negative wheel offset. So we're talking negative 12, negative, what is it, 20, 28, or like negative 32 or something. Or I know SCS has really crazy negative wheel offsets, but that's because those wheels are more popular with like Tacomas and Forerunners, which the axle width is actually a lot narrower, but the Tundra has a wider axle width. So 0 offset is a pretty nice balance. You get a little bit of poke. It's not super pokey, which is not what I'm looking for. So I'm happy with 0 offset. I'd probably, if I were to do it again, it would cause less issues if I went with like a positive. So like a positive 18, I think this wheel has in the 17-inch wheel size. So yeah, Method race wheels. I love Method. These are, these are my second set of MRW 315s. I love Method so much that I got the exact same model wheel, the exact same color, and I basically swapped them out and I refreshed it. And that's why I really like these wheels, and they really make my truck look badass, and I really love that. And Method's really the quintessential like established brand for off-road wheels. I do have a affiliate link with them, so if you'd like to go check out Method wheels, I can get you 20% off using my link in the bio or in my link tree, and that'll be in the description. So if you like these wheels, or you like anything from Method, take advantage of that link and sign up, and then I'll help you get 20% off. So we talked about wheels and tires on the truck, but let's talk about the newest addition, the wheels and tires in the bed. So this is going to be the SDHQ chase rack for the new Gen Tundra, the 2022 up Gen 3 Tundra. So what's super cool about these is these will allow you to fit 2 spares in your bed, strapped down safely, securely, and it honestly just looks badass. Like, this really completes that pre-runner look that I'm trying to go for, and that pre-runner performance too, because what this is going to do is it's going to really tame out my rear. So what happens when you're pre-running is, because if you're running your truck with a dry bed, what's going to happen is there's actually not going to be enough weight in the back, and your bed is going to be bouncing around all the time, and your rear axle is going to want to buck up. So with this, it's going to add about 300 pounds in the bed, and it's going to be right over the axle too. So see the axle here, and it's going to be right over the axle. So that's really going to really control that back end when we're hitting whoops and we're hitting, just heavy whoops and stuff out in the desert. So it's very functional. It's built incredibly well. This thing is a freaking beast, right? So black powder coat, super modular. So all these tie down points you can put, they're mainly for gas, for the Scribner cans, or the VP Racing, those big fuel jugs that you see a lot of pre-runners have. So that's mainly for that. I have a kit. I have some Scribner cans back home. So yeah, this chaser rack just looks insane. This thing really, like, just makes it look so tough. Basically, we're able to have 2 full-size spares. Okay, so how they mount in is there's a hook there, there's a strap, and what's gonna happen is it's gonna strap over the tire and it's going to strap onto this support harness right here. So what's cool about that is these things, if you've ever seen one of these harnesses, basically these can't get loose, right? So it's tightening on top of itself. So what's gonna happen is when you're pre-running and you're going up and down and you're like hitting whoops and like bumps and stuff, this rack is gonna stay tight, it's gonna stay taut, and it's gonna stay secure in your bed. You don't have to worry about this thing flying around or breaking off or whatever. So that's basically my whole wheel and tire setup right here. And I talked about the weight. So the chase rack on SDHQ's website, I haven't really weighed it, but it felt like 100 pounds. It wasn't super heavy, but because of the shape, it needs 2 people to carry around. So you can lift it up just off the floor, but if you were to walk with it, that would be a lot more difficult. So about 100 pounds for the rack, about the tires about like 80 pounds each, and then the wheels like 24, 26. So it's about like a little bit over 100 pounds each tire. So we're talking about like 300 pounds in the back. So you can imagine dailying it like this would probably suck in terms of fuel mileage and like power, but the Tundra just absolutely handles it, man. No issues power wise with this thing. It still gets up, still goes, but it's going to want to stay in boost a lot more, which, you know, when it's in boost, it absolutely sucks fuel. So keep that in mind. I probably won't daily it like this. I'll probably take off the spares, put them in storage, and just leave the rack. So I'd suggest if you're gonna do this, you might want to look into getting some bike locks. So I have 2 bike locks here with 2 different codes. So if they manage to figure out one bike lock, they won't figure out the other. It's just a little bit extra safety too, right? Like, you know, like, okay, if they really wanted to take it, they could just cut the bike lock, but you know, at that point it's like, okay, that's a lot of work just to get 2 beater tires, right? Like, look at these guys are like almost out. So anyways, yeah, that's SDHQ chase rack. Now let's talk about armor. So what's cool is this is the C4 Fabrication hybrid front bumper for the 2022 Toyota Tundra. So what's cool about this is it's going to be a lot lighter than your Overland series because it's primarily made out of tubing. And I also like this front bumper more over the Overland, not because it's a lot lighter than that, but because you're able to put more lights in the fog pockets. So on the Overland, you're only able to put 1 squadron in the corner, but with the hybrid, you're able to stuff as many as you can fit in there. So I was able to manage to fit 2 Squadron Pros and an S2 Pro in each corner. And it's a lot of light. Like, seriously, like this thing lights up the entire road. It's like, it's actually insane how bright this thing is. And then it has the 40-inch Baja Designs S8 right in the center. And yeah, this thing just looks super beefy. It's taken a few hits out in the desert before. I don't really rock crawl, so this hasn't seen any rocks, but it has seen some extra whoops, you know, that I kind of took a little bit faster than I probably should have. And I can even show you down here. Kind of kissed it a little bit. It's all good though. You know, like this thing's just a beast. This thing just takes anything. And C4 also replaces your front like skid plate, that plastic skid plate there. So yeah, I'm also not running any engine skid plates. I probably should. I just haven't found any really skid plates that I really like aesthetics wise. I know that sounds kind of stupid because like, oh, like wouldn't you want just protection, plus you don't even see it anyway. But you know, like for me, like if I'm gonna get protection, I want it to also look good as well. And I also am trying to be a little bit more weight conscious now, so I might look into like aluminum or like a rib like steel plate with like a lot of like cuts and stuff. So I wonder if we'll see some more development from other companies about some skid plates. So that's the front bumper. You can check it out. It's available now, C4 Fab. And this thing is just beastly. Like this really opens up a lot of the clearance angles of this truck, and it really fixes a lot of issues that the stock front bumper had. Like it hung down like super low, and like it would always get cut up and stuff, and it was just not a good time if you seriously take this thing off-road. So the C4 front bumper really fixes that. So moving over to the sliders here, these are also from C4 Fabrication. These are going to be their Tundra rock sliders. They're Gen 3 Tundra rock sliders. So what's cool about these is they just have a different design to them, you know. They also have a sick kick out here. So when you hit a rock and such, right, or like a tree, it'll kick out, so it'll push your truck away from whatever it's making contact to. So these are in a black powder coat, also made out of like tubing and steel and stuff. And I just really like how they look. They really look awesome. Like most of the skid plate, or I mean most of the slider designs have a full plate that goes all the way across. I do kind of like this gapping that they decided to do. It definitely looks a lot more intricate and a lot more, you know, cool like aesthetics points. So take that as you will. Here's C4 Fab, super insane welds. Like these welds are like super nice. I really love how it looks, and also to the added protection. So with a rock slider, you can really see how far it pokes out, right? So another added thing too is, if you're mall crawling, some car parked super close to you, you won't get a lot of door dings because it'll help protect you there. So yeah, that's about armor. And yeah, so now we talked about armor, let's talk about lighting. So this truck has a lot of upgraded lights, as you can kind of tell. So basically all of my auxiliary lights are Baja Designs, and then my headlights are from ALPHAREX. So the Baja Designs lights, I have the center 40-inch S8 in amber, and then for the fogs we have the Squadron Pros, dual Squadron Pros on each side, and an S2 Pro for kind of like a ditch light, perhaps. It points out kind of where like a ditch light would point, and it really lights up everything that I need. I'm not really a huge fan of the A-pillar ditch lights. I know a lot of guys, that's a very popular mod. I'm personally not a fan of that, but who knows, maybe I might eat my words, and you guys will see that on the truck. But for right now, I really like how clean this looks, I really like that those three lights in the fog pocket, and these lights are incredibly bright. So Baja Designs in the front, and Baja Designs also in the rear. So if you guys have not seen this yet before, this is called a chase light. So what this does is, when you're out in the desert and you're pre-running, what's going to happen is you're going to kick up a lot of dust, and the people following you aren't going to be able to see your truck unless you have the hazards on or you put your brakes. So what this chase light does is it illuminates your truck so that the people behind you can see through the dust that you create. So it's a safety issue, it's a safety thing as well, and it just honestly looks kind of cool too. Like, not gonna lie, like having like a big squadron pointed right at your face, it's like, holy shit, like this guy's gonna freaking melt my eyes. But yeah, so originally I had, if you guys have been following the truck for a while, originally I had the S2 Pro in the back. So S2 was just kind of looks like that, but I wanted a little bigger footprint when I was off-road. I noticed that I was following my truck and someone else's truck, and I noticed that the chase light wasn't as big as I wanted, and I figured the S2 Pro has the same output as the Squadron Sport. So I figured, okay, let's just get the Squadron Sport, the same output, but it's a bigger footprint, and I think just proportionally it looks better on the truck. So proportionally, I think it looks better, and it gives out the light that I need. And the lens combination is going to be your flood on the bottom and then spot on the top. So flood on the bottom, spot on the top. And what that's gonna do is really point over the tailgate and then kind of flood outward. So if you were to see it like at an angle, you'd still be able to see. So yeah, that's gonna be mounted on SDHQ rail chase light mount, chase light brackets. These things are absolutely solid. There is no way you're moving this thing. Like, this thing doesn't even move. It's mounted to the rail, the factory rail here, and it's been solid so far. No issues, no complaints. Solid product. As for the headlights, these are going to be the ALPHAREX Nova series in Alpha Black and with a white DRL. So these things are absolutely killer. Look at this. Amber sequential. And if I'm going to turn the truck on, I wonder... So these are the lights on right now. It doesn't flicker like this in person. It's just because of the refresh rate of the camera. But these headlights are the upgraded ALPHAREX Nova series Alpha Black, so they have a black housing. So the housing themselves is actually smoked a little bit, or the lens rather, the lens itself is smoked, and then the housing inside is also just black. So it looks super dark, it looks super menacing. You know, at night when I'm driving around, like that quad beam LED, like, man, this thing really looks a business right here. So what's cool about these lights is it has increased output. It retains the same stock manual level for the SR5, and also too, on the upgraded headlight, it retains the auto level. So when your truck squats, when you're towing or whatever, the headlight auto levels to where it needs to be. So ALPHAREX Nova series, these are also available right now. I'll have a link for them in the description if you guys want to check them out. So what's cool is they come in a white DRL here with amber turns. So if I put the amber turns, right, they turn like this. Super cool, super fancy, you know, fancy schmancy. So yeah, these are awesome. I really love how they look. While I'm here in the driver's seat, or rather in the driver's side, this is how I'm controlling the lights. So the lights are being controlled by the switch panel. This is a Switch Pro SP9100, and it's currently mounted on an SDHQ switch panel mount. So this is the OEM mount, mounts right into here, and it looks super integrated, it looks super clean. I think this is like one of the nicest mounts that are out there right now, and it serves its purpose, right? So I have my light bar, my chase. So the chase is going to be the chase lights that are pointing backwards. My backlight feature for the S8. The bumper is the two inner squadrons. The corners are going to be the second outer squadrons, and the ditch is going to be the S2s. The grille and cargo currently are not being used right now. I just have a cover on them just so that at night it's not blinding. So this thing really covers up that light during what's called nighttime driving, so it's easier to focus on the road. So that's connected through some wiring in the hood right here. Switch Pro. So this was wired by Primo at Prosworks on Instagram. Super clean wiring. I have the upgraded battery terminals from SDHQ. Everything looks super solid here, and they're all wired. Through the front. You can see in there. They all go into the side and wired to my battery. So what's interesting about the hybrid or the non-hybrid is the non-hybrid has the battery right here in the traditional spot. But you know, if you're in a hybrid, the battery is under the seat. So how do you get that, you know, how do you get all that routed? So what you're gonna need to do is you need to check out SDHQ. They have a battery terminal kit that's for the hybrid Tundras that relocates a lot of the accessories so that you can mount it in the engine bay. So that just makes, you know, power cable management a lot easier, a lot nicer, and you don't have to run cables underneath your floorboard or whatever, or some stuff like that, and you know, it doesn't impede on really anything. So that's gonna be lighting right there, and yeah. So for performance, we have this carbon exhaust here. So I really like how this thing sounds. It sounds super throaty for a V6, you know, and like a lot of guys will say, oh, like, why are you putting exhaust on a V6? Well, you know, like Raptor's been doing it, and Raptors honestly sound pretty cool too. Like, I don't knock, you know, a turbo V6 sound, and it honestly sounds like really good. Like, I'll put some clips in out in the desert and just kind of listen to how it sounds, you know, and I think it honestly sounds really good. Obviously, it's not going to be a V8. That's not what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to make this, you know, this Tundra sound a little bit more rowdy. So this is the carbon cut and clamp. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna cut your OE exhaust. They have a clamp there, and it mounts to somewhere in there. I can't really see this angle. Yeah, right there. So essentially like a muffler swap. And they give you some really cool ceramic tips right here, and it sounds awesome. Let me see if I can try to run it for you. Yeah, it has a nice growl on the front and has a nice idle too. See if I can put the mic next to it. Yeah, sounds solid. And then last but not least, some bed organization mods is I installed these bedside Molle panels from Rego Fabrication. So these are gonna be cool because they'll basically let me use the bed sides as another storage option, right? So Molle panels are basically some additional tie down points that you can use to strap down bags, strap down like boxes and cases and stuff. And I was looking around, you know, the market. There's another Molle panel thing for these trucks from Rado Designs, but I personally think this Rego Fab one looks a lot cleaner. You know, so I have the two bed sides and I also have the front. So you can see a little bit of the front right there. And again, these are Rego Fabrication. These are available now. I'll have a link for them in my description of this video, so you can check them out if you guys were looking for, you know, additional storage solutions for your truck. And I do have the interior Molle panels. I haven't been able to install them yet, but essentially what they do is they let you put some Molle paneling right here next to your leg. I think that's super cool. And it also has a device bridge, so it goes like above here, and you can mount like iPads and like stuff, or if you have like a radio, you can put like your Midland or, you know, any of your other radio like rugged. And that's gonna be super cool for when you go pre-running. My vision is to put like a small, like a fire extinguisher, like a small one, or like a small like med kit back there. And then I also want to have an iPad mount. So I want to put like an iPad mount right there for like lead nav. And then Rego Fab also creates this dash kit that lets you also put additional more mounts and stuff up on the dash. So unfortunately those weren't able to make it in this video. They require a little bit of drilling and some rivet tools, which I'm not super comfortable with doing it myself. So I just haven't had time with my installer to get that done. But if you guys want to check that out, again, Rego Fabrication, solid products. But essentially, yeah, guys, this truck is absolutely dialed right now. I really love where it's at, and I'm pretty excited to continue building it further. You know, like, this truck has come a long way for this past year, and I'm just super excited to be able to build it out as quickly as I have. I wouldn't have been able to do it without my awesome sponsors. And also too, like, a lot of people think, oh, you got these like you got these mods for free, you're like, you got these like sponsorships and stuff. But the truth of the matter is, I bought a lot of these products first, and then I reached out for the sponsorships, right? And I wouldn't have sponsored them if I wasn't able, or I wasn't willing to pay my own money for them. That's gonna be my #1 rule for myself, is I'm never gonna accept a sponsorship for any company if I'm not willing to spend my own money. Because I don't wanna promote something that, and I'm telling you guys like, oh, you guys should spend your money on so-and-so product, but I'm over here not doing that either. So, for example, that C4 bumper was given to me for free from C4. It was through a collaboration. I paid for the powder coat. I got the sliders as well. They gave me half off for the sliders, and I paid for the powder coat in full myself. And I would have bought the front bumper anyway, because I really like how it looks, and I think it's the best one on the market right now. Same thing with those headlights. ALPHAREX gave me those headlights for Overland Expo, and I had the money in my bank account. I was ready to buy them, and then they hit me up, and I was like, hell yeah. So again, guys, like, you see all these sponsorships and stuff and all these free products, but rest assured that these products would have been on my truck anyway. You know, I can guarantee, I can tell you that wholeheartedly. And that's just the, you know, the genuineness that I'm trying to bring to this community. I don't want to push random bullshit. I don't want to push bullshit products, and you're never, ever, ever going to see that from me. That's why I only put the best stuff on my truck. And yeah, so again, huge shout out to all my sponsors and everyone that's really trusted in the build and really liked what I'm doing and wanted to be a part of it. And all those guys will be linked in the description right at the top where they deserve. And yeah, guys, if you guys watched the video this far, thank you guys so much. Sometimes I kind of feel kind of weird filming these out in public like this, but this video has been just, you know, long time coming. The truck's been through a lot, and it's only gonna get crazier after this. So stay tuned, guys. If you guys want to follow me on Instagram, follow the build. My Instagram is @fullmag_tundra. You can subscribe to the YouTubes. Comment down below what you think, what your favorite mod is, what you would change, what you would do differently, what you would double down on. You know, if you were in my position, what would you do again? Let's say, you know, you had this truck, something adverse happened to it, and then you had an opportunity to build it again. What would you do again? So yeah, guys, I'll see you later, and yeah, we'll see some more footage of this thing out in the desert. So peace out.